Imagine, for just a second, that human relationships are like a living cosmos. When they're healthy, they function perfectly, like a system of invisible orbits. Two people are moving together in this shared rhythm. Sometimes one carries a little more weight, sometimes the other steps up, but the system, it just breathes naturally. It balances itself out. But what happens when that gravitational pull starts to weaken? In this explainer, we're going to explore a truly fascinating psychological anomaly. We're going to map exactly what happens when the natural, invisible ecosystem of a relationship collapses and a cold, mechanical system of ledgers and debts takes its place.
So why do caring relationships quietly turn into scorekeeping systems? It's honestly one of the most profound mysteries in human behavior. You have two people who start out with all this warmth and natural generosity, yet somehow, over time, the rhythm stops feeling shared and it starts feeling counted. Suddenly, every single favor is tracked, every little effort is measured. To understand why this collapse happens, we have to look way past the surface.
Okay, let's dive right into this. The very first thing we need to understand is what a transactional relationship actually is. Because, when we see someone keeping score, our gut instinct is to assume they're just being greedy or maybe a bit petty. But the reality? It's far more complex. Transactional feeling isn't created by the act of giving itself. It's actually created by giving without trust. It's a dynamic that pops up when people no longer feel secure enough to just relax into the relationship's natural gravity. It's an anomaly, really, born from a profound lack of emotional safety. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to use a sort of microscope to telescope approach. Let's zoom in on a simple, everyday favor. On the surface, the visible action is just, hey, I did this for you. Maybe it's giving them a ride to the airport or just doing the dishes. But if we zoom out and look at the emotional logic, the dark matter of the relationship that's holding everything together, the unseen reality is actually, I need this to mean something. You see, once trust weakens, people stop experiencing the relationship as a living, breathing connection, and they start experiencing it as a system of balance. The thing is, every single action in a relational orbit carries a hidden signal underneath it. A favor is literally never just a favor. The underlying message might be, you matter to me, or it might be, I expect you to remember this. The exact same action can taste perfectly balanced and sweet to one person and overwhelmingly obligatory to another. So when people engage in this hidden scorekeeping and say, well, I did so much for them, they aren't just talking about the physical act, they're talking about the meaning they believe should have been recognized. And the really painful truth here? That person doesn't just feel unpaid, they feel completely unseen. There is a really vital rule in the psychology of connection, and it goes like this. People usually tolerate asymmetry better than deadness. Let that sink in for a second. A healthy relationship is not a cash register. It absolutely does not have to balance perfectly every single day. Just like breathing or the changing seasons in a biological ecosystem, the rhythm just continues. You inhale, you exhale. One person might carry way more of the emotional burden during a really hard season, and you know what? That is completely fine, as long as the system feels alive and moving. What humans absolutely cannot tolerate is when that exchange becomes one-directional and totally lifeless.
Now, what exactly happens when that deadness starts creeping in? Well, the human mind begins to keep a ledger at the exact moment it expects uncertainty. Think of it like a prepaid phone balance. When you know you have plenty of credit, you literally never think about the minutes. You just pick up the phone and make the call. But if your balance drops unpredictably, you start watching it like a hawk. You measure every single second. That watchfulness isn't pettiness. It is a direct biological and psychological defense mechanism against insecurity. The more uncertain the return, the more the human mind measures the gift.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that fairness is emotional way before it is ever mathematical. Imagine sitting around a dinner table where one chair is just slightly taller than the rest. The unevenness itself isn't really the problem. The real problem starts when nobody acknowledges it and everyone just has to sit there awkwardly without knowing why. Human relationship systems can absolutely survive uneven exchange. What they cannot easily survive is unexplained, unacknowledged unevenness. It is the story around the amount that breaks the system, not the actual amount itself.
Because of this, we really need a massive reframe. When someone starts relating through an exchange, keeping track of who texted first or who apologized first, they usually aren't trying to be cold. The ledger is not just a weapon. Sometimes it's armor. It is a protective defense mechanism deployed against the terrifying fear of giving too much energy out into the void of space. They are silently asking themselves, can I afford to relax, or will I just disappear in this relationship if I stop measuring?
Let's look at how this ecosystem actually breaks down. And it rarely happens in one massive explosion, by the way. It grows sort of the way a crack slowly spreads in a wall. First, the giving becomes less visible. The efforts are just expected, not appreciated. Second, the return becomes unpredictable, and that creates this deep, underlying vigilance. Third, the meaning becomes ambiguous. Was that apology real, or was it just a reset button? And finally, the cost starts to feel incredibly personal. A single imbalance? That's manageable. But repeated uncertainty teaches the brain to anticipate disappointment and to start attaching conditions to its generosity.
We can actually see this structural collapse so vividly in family dynamics. Imagine one sibling is supporting a parent financially while the others are handling the daily errands and the emotional check-ins. Initially, it's this healthy shared orbit, but if they stop feeling equally seen, the whole system collapses. The financial support becomes tracked as proof of sacrifice. The errands are suddenly viewed as proof of neglect. What was once this beautiful, organic ecosystem of family care just collapses into a rigid, private accounting system where every single gesture is interpreted through the harsh lens of who is doing more.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact transformation we're talking about. Look at how the center of gravity massively shifts here. In the early stage, the relationship is entirely organized around connection. People say things like, "I want to help," or "No worries, I've got it." But in the later stage, the center of gravity shifts entirely over to gathering evidence. It turns into, "I need this to count," or "I need proof." The repeated uncertainty has created vigilance, and that vigilance has created emotional distance, which accidentally reproduces the exact coldness they were trying so hard to protect themselves from in the first place.
Now that you can read this system, you can really see the profound difference between the two states. Healthy reciprocity is a living, breathing organism. It's flexible, it's alive, and it says, "We both matter," even if the timing is a bit uneven right now. Hidden scorekeeping, on the other hand, is guarded, tense, and silently audited. It operates like a rigid machine, saying, "I need proof this isn't costing me more than it returns." Understanding this gives you the incredible power to hear the fear underneath someone's resentment, instead of just reacting to their irritation.
This brings us to our ultimate takeaway. Every single connection operates on three vital layers. The surface action, meaning what was actually done, the emotional meaning, what it signaled, and the relational pattern, whether it feels mutual over time. When these three orbits align naturally, the relationship breathes. It generates its own gravity, and literally nobody needs to count. But when they drift apart, that's when trust breaks down and the ledgers come right out.
Which leaves us looking at the universe of our own connections. If transactional relationships are ultimately born from a lack of safety, the real work isn't figuring out who owes who. The next time you find yourself, or even someone else, quietly keeping score, take a step back from the ledger. Don't just ask, "What did they do?" Look at the invisible forces at play and ask, "What does this pattern teach each person to expect?"